What if the single greatest power you possess isn't your intelligence, your talent, or your connections, but something hidden inside your skull that most people never learn to use? For the past quarter century, brain imaging technology has evolved beyond what anyone imagined. We can now watch thoughts form. We can see memories being created. We can observe the moment an idea sparks to life. But here's what the scans reveal that changes everything. Before this technology existed, neuroscientists understood the brain primarily through its failures. A stroke here, a tumor there, a traumatic injury that erased someone's ability to recognize faces or feel fear. These tragedies taught us what each region did by showing us what happened when it stopped working. Then came the scanners, and suddenly we could watch healthy brains in action. What we discovered rewrote the rulebook entirely: neuroplasticity. The word sounds clinical, academic, but its meaning is revolutionary. The brain grows and changes throughout your entire life, not just in childhood, not just during those explosive early years when a newborn transforms into a walking, talking, opinionated human being in just 24 months. From 0 to 2, that burst of neuroplasticity is visible to anyone who's watched a child develop. They go from helpless to fluent in multiple languages, from dependent to defiant. Their brains are literally wiring themselves at an astonishing pace. Then comes adolescence. The teenage brain undergoes pruning, shedding connections that no longer serve it, refining itself for adulthood. Sexual behavior, emotional complexity, social navigation. This process continues until around age 25. For decades, science assumed that was it. Once you physically stopped growing, your brain stopped changing. They were wrong. And this is where everything gets interesting for anyone who's ever wanted to change their life. From 25 to 65 and beyond, your brain remains plastic, malleable, capable of rewiring itself based on what you do, what you think, and how you direct your attention. This isn't abstract theory. This is the physical structure of your brain reshaping itself in response to your experiences, which means the thoughts you think today are literally changing the architecture of your mind for tomorrow. Neuroplasticity isn't just a scientific concept, it's the biological foundation for every transformation you've ever witnessed. Every person who reinvented themselves, every late bloomer who found success after 40, every survivor who rebuilt after trauma. But understanding that change is possible isn't enough. You need a framework. Manifestation, that loaded word that makes some people roll their eyes, is simply applied neuroplasticity. It's a 4-step process for deliberately reshaping your brain to create the life you want. The first step is raised awareness. You cannot hit a target you cannot see. You cannot build a life you haven't imagined. Most people drift through existence responding to circumstances rather than creating them. They know what they don't want, but ask them what they actually want and they draw a blank. Raised awareness means getting specific. Not "I want to be happy." That's too vague for your brain to work with. Your brain needs concrete images, specific feelings, tangible outcomes. What does happiness look like? Where are you living? Who's with you? What does a Tuesday morning feel like in this imagined future? The more detailed your vision, the more your brain can work toward it. Step 2 is focused attention. Once you know what you want, you must train yourself to notice what's relevant. Your brain processes 11 million bits of information every second, but consciously you can only handle about 50. The rest gets filtered out automatically. Those filters are built from your beliefs, your habits, and your expectations. If you believe the world is dangerous, your filter highlights threats. If you believe opportunities are scarce, your filter confirms that emptiness. Focused attention means deliberately directing those filters. It means noticing the negative thought patterns that have been holding you back, the automatic self-criticism, the reflexive pessimism, the habitual comparison to others. But it also means noticing opportunities that you previously overlooked, the conversation that could lead somewhere, the sign that points toward a new direction, the coincidence that might not be coincidence at all. You're building a database. This doesn't work for me. When I do this, good things happen. This pattern keeps repeating. Step 3 is deliberate practice. Knowing isn't enough. Intending isn't enough. Visualization without action is just daydreaming. At some point, you have to actually do the things that move you toward what you want. But here's where most people fail. They set massive goals and expect themselves to leap from zero to hero overnight. That's not how brains work. That's not how change works. Deliberate practice means breaking it down. Tiny steps, low-risk experiments, small actions that build momentum and confidence. Step 4 isn't really a step. It's the glue that holds everything together. Accountability. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Motivation fades, enthusiasm wanes, life happens. The shiny new goal from January 1st becomes the abandoned resolution by February 15th. This isn't a character flaw, it's neuroscience. The brain perceives uncertainty as threat. Any move toward an unknown outcome triggers your survival mechanisms. That's why the fear of asking someone out can feel physically paralyzing. That's why sending that job application gets delayed again and again. When you set goals that are too large, your brain perceives them as threats rather than opportunities. The gap between where you are and where you want to be triggers anxiety. And anxiety triggers avoidance. The solution is bite-sized chunks. If you want to get fit, don't commit to the gym 5 days a week. Commit to a 10-minute walk. If you want to start a business, don't quit your job tomorrow. Spend an hour on Sunday exploring an idea. Some things are more within your control than others. Your health, your skills, your daily habits. Other things involve other people, marriage, children, partnership. Those take longer. They require more variables to align. But here's what matters. Every action you take is changing your brain. Every choice rewires something. Every step you take toward what you want makes the next step slightly easier. This is why accountability matters. A vision board, a partner, a coach, someone or something that reminds you why you started. That holds the space for your growth when you forget your own potential. At this point, I need to share something personal. Most of us know what we don't want. We're clear on the problems, the frustrations, the stuck places, but figuring out what we actually want, that's harder than it sounds. I've been at a crossroads recently. Professional questions that don't have easy answers, direction unclear, path forward foggy. And I realized something important. Sometimes you need someone who knows how to listen. Not to give advice, not to fix you, but to ask the right questions and give you space to arrive at your own conclusions. That's what genuine coaching provides. Deep questions, real listening, space to think. When I first considered coaching, I was skeptical. I expected someone to hand me a curriculum or tell me what to do. What I got was completely different. My coach asked questions that cut through the noise, and then he listened. And then he asked more questions. And somewhere in that process, clarity emerged that hadn't existed before. After just 2 sessions, I saw my direction with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. And with that clarity came the ability to take focused, meaningful steps. If you're stuck in your career or just unsure what's next, there are resources available. Sometimes all it takes is speaking to someone who actually knows how to listen. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, the difference between the scientific approach and the spiritual approach. For years, manifestation and the law of attraction have been explained through quantum physics, vibrations, frequencies, the universe responding to your energy. Here's the problem with that framing. If it's all about vibrations and cosmic forces, you're not really in control. You're sending out signals and hoping something out there responds. You're asking the universe for favors. The cognitive science framing is different. It puts the power back where it belongs, inside your own skull. When you understand that manifestation is neuroplasticity in action, you understand that you're not begging the universe for scraps. You're rewiring your own brain to notice opportunities, take action, and persist through obstacles. That's empowering, that's agency, that's control. This isn't mystical, it's mechanical, but it's also magical in its own way, because the machine you're working with is the most complex entity in the known universe. Let's get specific about how visualization actually works in the brain, because it's not magic, it's neuroscience. 3 processes happen when you visualize or use vision boards: selective filtering, selective attention, value tagging. First, selective filtering. Your brain is bombarded with information constantly. If you read a single edition of a major newspaper today, you'd absorb more information than someone would encounter in an entire lifetime a century ago. Your brain has natural filters to prevent overload. You don't notice your clothing against your skin throughout the day. You don't process every sound in your environment. These filters are designed for survival, to keep you focused on threats and opportunities relevant to basic existence. But survival isn't thriving. If you're still wired primarily to avoid predators and find food, you'll miss the opportunities that lead to genuine fulfillment. Visualization directs those filters. When you look at images representing your goals every day, or close your eyes and vividly imagine desired outcomes, you're programming your filters. You're telling your brain what matters. This leads to the second process, selective attention. It's like when you buy a specific car and suddenly see it everywhere. The car wasn't invisible before. You just weren't primed to notice it. Visualization primes your brain to notice opportunities aligned with your goals. The conversation that could lead somewhere, the article with crucial information, the coincidence that opens a door. These opportunities existed before. You just couldn't see them because your brain wasn't tuned to their frequency. The third process is value tagging. Your brain constantly ranks everything by importance. It does this 2 ways, cold and warm. Cold value tagging is survival basics: food, shelter, safety. These get priority automatically. Your brain doesn't ask whether you want to notice hunger. It just does. Warm value tagging is different. It's driven by emotion, desire, meaning. The things on your vision board, your dreams, your aspirations, the evidence that you're thriving rather than just surviving, these get tagged as important through emotional connection. By repeatedly exposing your brain to images of what you want, you're raising their priority. You're telling your neural networks, this matters. Pay attention to this. Don't let this slide past. But here's the crucial distinction. I don't call them vision boards. I call them action boards. Because sitting at home staring at pictures while waiting for the universe to deliver is fantasy, not manifestation. You have to be out there, networking, dating, applying, trying, failing, trying again. The board primes your brain. Your feet do the work. What belongs on an action board? Whatever speaks to you, whatever represents your goal in a way that resonates emotionally. Some images are literal, a picture of someone doing yoga with a toned body. That's obvious, that's direct. But images can be metaphorical too, a piece of clothing that represents the size you want to become, a location that symbolizes the life you want to build, an object that carries emotional weight for you. There's no right or wrong, there's only what works for you. There's a psychological phenomenon called the Tetris effect, named after the video game where blocks fall and players must arrange them. People who played Tetris extensively reported seeing falling blocks in their dreams, in their peripheral vision, in their mind's eye when trying to sleep. What this reveals is that the last thing you look at before sleep imprints on your subconscious more strongly than anything else during the day. The transitions between wakefulness and sleep, hypnagogic, falling asleep, and hypnopompic, waking up, are states where your subconscious is unusually receptive to suggestion. This is why I keep my action board next to my bed, first thing I see in the morning, last thing I see at night. The process has steps. Find images that genuinely resonate. Look at them daily. Act as if your desired outcome is inevitable or has already happened. Feel genuine gratitude for its arrival. This shifts your brain chemistry. It moves you from fear state to trust state. From cortisol, the stress hormone, flooding your system, to oxytocin, the bonding hormone, creating openness and connection. In fear state, blood flow prioritizes survival responses. You're reactive, defensive, closed to possibility. In trust state, you're more likely to take healthy risks, to be open, to genuinely believe that what you want is possible. That state, the trust state, the abundant mindset, is the only state from which manifestation works. If doubt, fear, or shame are present, you're broadcasting scarcity. And scarcity attracts more scarcity. An abundant mindset means believing you deserve what you're asking for, that it's okay to pursue it, that there's enough to go around. A scarcity mindset means thinking negatively, expecting failure, believing you'll never get what you want. Here's the thing about negative thought patterns. They don't emerge from nowhere. They're produced by deeper beliefs, beliefs about worthiness, self-esteem, deservingness, fear of judgment if you ask for too much. You can't change your thinking by just slapping positive affirmations on top of negative beliefs. That's like painting over rust. The corrosion remains underneath. You have to dig down. Raised awareness applies to yourself as much as to your goals. Why haven't you been able to manifest what you want? What feelings keep blocking you? What behavior patterns repeat themselves? Once you understand the underlying belief, you create a mantra that directly counteracts it. Every time the negative thought appears, you replace it with the mantra. You're slowly, patiently pushing your brain from scarcity toward abundance. Not overnight, not perfectly, but progressively. Once abundance becomes more frequent in your thinking, action becomes possible. But here's the obstacle. Uncertainty is the brain's biggest threat. The job interview is never as bad as you imagine. The date might be awkward, but it won't kill you. Yet the anticipation, the not knowing, feels unbearable. That fear of the first step holds more people back than any actual obstacle. I call them experiments, low-risk versions of whatever you're afraid to try. You don't know how it'll go, but you can take a small step and observe what happens, then build on that, then try something slightly harder. Dig down to the belief beneath the thought, use mantras to shift the pattern, then experiment with small actions that build toward bigger ones. This is how change actually happens, not in dramatic leaps, in tiny, consistent steps that accumulate into transformation. One pattern I've noticed in working with people, they achieve something significant and immediately move to the next goal without pausing to acknowledge what just happened. This is a mistake. Every time you achieve something, every time you notice, when I do this, good things happen, you're building evidence. You're training your brain to recognize the conditions that create success. The more you acknowledge your accomplishments, the more aware you become of the environments and actions that produce results. I told a friend recently about an opportunity that came my way. I'd asked for something, and it was given. Then I asked if they needed another consultant and recommended my friend. They said yes. I told her, I've been manifesting a lot recently. Something about the conditions is right now. This is a good time to ask for things. Because here's the truth. Manifestation doesn't happen 365 days a year in a steady stream. There are periods where nothing seems to happen. And then, like waiting for a bus for 40 minutes, and suddenly 3 arrive at once, opportunities cluster. I've learned over the years to recognize these windows. When things start flowing, that's the time to ask for more, to push further, to believe bigger. Let me share something personal. When I decided to leave my secure profession and start a business, I'd been thinking about it for 2 years. I saved some money, enough to survive, but not enough to feel safe. People asked why I didn't just work occasionally in my old field, pick up shifts, earn enough to eliminate the financial worry. But I've learned something about myself. I do amazing work when my back is against the wall, when there's no safety net, when failure isn't an option because there's no fallback position. That's not for everyone. But for me, it works. My first action board had a specific number, the exact amount I needed to survive the first year, with no job and a new business. The next year, I doubled it, then doubled again. Over time, what I ask for has grown, not because I'm greedier, but because I'm more practiced. I understand the process better. I know what's possible. I've seen what works, and I've learned to leave space on my board, empty spaces for things I haven't imagined yet, because my brain has limits. It can only conceive what it already knows, but life can deliver things I never thought to ask for. Be careful what you wish for, though, because when manifestations start happening, they accumulate, they grow, they become bigger than you imagined possible, at any age, any stage, any mindset. You can change your brain and reinvent your life. The science is clear. The mechanism is understood. The path exists. The only question is whether you'll walk it. Your brain isn't fixed. It's waiting for you to give it direction. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't distance, it's belief. If this exploration of the mind resonated with you, take a moment to like this video. It tells the algorithm that conversations like this matter. It helps others find their way here too. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to The Gloom Inside. We release new documentaries every week, deep dives into the psychology of everything from manipulation to meaning, from loneliness to legacy. Until next time, walk in the light. But don't fear the gloom inside. That's where the truth lives.